South Park creators take deepfaking to another level, and so does Ray Fisher with his accusations against Warner. Today on Midnight's Edge in the morning.
Good morning again, and welcome to a brand new week. I am Tom Connors. Welcome to Midnight's Edge in the morning. With me, as always, is the boss man, Andre. How you doing, sir?
Greetings, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you are.
Whatever it is, where you is. And with us, joining us once again, our good friend, Mr. Gary J. Tunnicliffe. How you doing?
Good morning. You sound like Truman when you start the show, Andre. You do. You know, from the Truman Show.
Oh, well, thank you, I guess.
Good morning.
That's where I stole it from, yes.
There you go.
Actually, that's where I stole it from too, come to think of it. I had just forgotten it.
But that's, good afternoon. Good.
Yeah, well, that's the first time I've been told I sound like Truman. There's typically many people I sound like, but Jim Carrey isn't among them.
Oh, there you go.
All righty then.
And cue everyone's poor Jim Carrey impression.
Exactly, yeah. Oh, so yes, with us again is Mr. Gary J. Tunnicliffe, who, if you're not familiar with, has worked on pretty much every horror film known to man in the last 30 years or so. Just about everyone. Unless you didn't like it, then he didn't work on it. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, no. I worked on plenty that people didn't like. Trust me, I worked on lots that people hated, so that's all good.
You have no problems or qualms or whatever you want to say admitting to that at all. I know we've had some fun conversations, which if you haven't checked out our interviews with you, you should do so when you get the time, because we do some deep dives into Hellraiser and quite a few other things with this man. So once again, we want to thank him for joining us. It's always a pleasure.
It's also a pleasure to have you back. Since last time you were here, we also took a deep dive into Sleepy Hollow and into a certain producer. And then you said that if you weren't coming back again, then Scott Rudin had come to take you. But luckily, you're still with us. So it seems that we were all able to step on the right side of that knife's edge. And I'd also like to say greetings to every single one in the chat. Donkeysaurus Rex is here. Alpha J30 is here. Michael W. Greetings, everyone. Chris Persa is here, and he says, "Show some support for Midnight's Edge and smash that like." Yeah, those are wise words to live by. So everyone, please do that. We got Morbid Fury here, and we've got Cat Sith here, and Tina Bojan is here. If I missed your surname, then sorry about that. But greetings. We have loads of people, and some even commented on the thumbnail there with the Trump lookalike. Yeah, win some access. Haha, I see. Sassy justice. Yes,
Sassy
indeed.
justice.
That is what we will be talking about first on the topic of deep faking. Now, just to get everyone up to speed, Sassy Justice is, I guess, the That's My Bush of this era, because the creators of South Park, pre 9/11, after Bush just got into office, they had like this other weekly sketch show that ran for like a couple of episodes called That's My Bush, which was like this parody of social affairs with scene from the White House with Bush lookalike and everything like that. It was actually pretty hilarious. I loved that series, and then it got cancelled after 9/11. But it was pretty brilliant. Again, this was a side project from the South Park guys, and this is something else like it. It's a slightly different take, since it's no longer like an askew view of the White House. But of course, there's still something there, since they deep fake Trump into, or rather the face of Trump, into this reporter, Sassy, whatever his name is, something sappy. Yeah, that's the one. And it's like then the fake news and reportings warning about the dangers of deep faking. mixed in with some real footage and some not quite so real footage that's masquerading for the deepfake stuff. That's kind of like the joke in there. So I just saw it now before the show. But Gary, tell us first your feelings on Sassy Justice before we get into the technology behind it and the implications of it.
Well, as you know, Andre, we've been talking about deepfaking now for quite some time, and whilst the content of the show, Sassy Justice, is one thing, really, it's the tech behind it that is I believe, absolutely ground shattering in terms of the industry regarding makeup effects, and several other things as well. And that's one of the things I really wanted to talk about, and we wanted to get in. And we've been discussing this for many months now behind the scenes. And I've been speaking to some key players in visual effects about this, because you talk about something like That's My Bush and shows like that, and even Saturday Night Live, and the regular tech is to take an actor, who either looks like somebody, or to put them in a prosthetic makeup, apply that makeup, and then have them go out there and do their impersonation. And with something like Sassy Justice, what we're seeing is multiple characters being deepfaked onto regular actors. In some cases, it's Peter Serafinowicz, and it's Matt and Trey playing characters as well. And in the last show, we saw Michael Caine, obviously Trump, and Al Gore, I believe, and several characters. And really, the thing we want.
Are you super serial?
Sorry,
super serial. Sorry.
I mean, to the point where I mean, just so that anyone watching this who doesn't know what deep faking is, it's not CGI creation of a face like de-aging, where you see like bad young Jeff Bridges in Tron or something like that, or face replacement. This isn't an animator animating somebody's face. This is a software AI learning technology that is applied, ran through a computer. And basically you have a donor face and a regular face, and the computer will literally take the donor face and manipulate it onto the actor's face, onto the person that you pick, by isolating their face. It requires no kind of like tweaking or frame by frame animation or anything like that. Once the computer learns the two faces and you feed it with enough imagery, it will translate that face into another face. And yes, it's very funny. Yes, it's hilarious. Yes, we're seeing deepfakes being done of, there's a Tom Cruise impersonator who's probably got more work than he can handle right now. And we're seeing multiple people do some brilliant deepfake work, Shamook and people like that, who are uploading their videos all the time and getting multiple hits on YouTube. But what we need to talk about, and what is really, really interesting, is the ramifications that this will have on the industry down the pipe. And I will expound on that a little bit later when we start to talk about this. But what you're seeing at the very low end, I mean, is like I say, on one side you've got Saturday Night Live putting people in makeup, and on the other side you've got Sassy Justice, where you've got virtually 100% realistic people playing somebody else. I mean, sure, there are going to be legal ramifications, I would imagine, as well, because I'm sure Tom Cruise isn't going to want his likeness being just, pushed around the internet without either getting a fee for it or having knowledge of the content he's saying. Because really, you could put any word into Tom Cruise's mouth and it could detract from his character and his persona and stuff like that. So there are going to be huge legal ramifications for this down the line as well. You know what I mean? So no, Charles Hoffman, who said that comment there, yes, we will touch on that, don't worry. But there are going to be legal ramifications with that kind of stuff as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I, when I watched it, I'm like, I seen like the politicians is one thing, because once you're a politician, you basically are public domain. Like I remember, that's just been something that's always a thing. And I remember Arnold Schwarzenegger running into that issue when he was governor. He tried to stop a bunch of, Governator toys or figures or whatever that were coming out. And he found out, no, you can't do that, because once you're a politician, you're public domain. They can do whatever they want with your likeness, and you can't do anything about it, pretty much. Up to a point, I'm sure, as far as like slander and other certain things like that and libel and whatnot. But point being, if you're a politician, there's nothing you can do about it. But you brought up another point, though. Notice there was like Julie Andrews and a couple. Michael Caine and a few other people. Now, my understanding from the whole thing, like what Trey and Matt have to do when it comes to South Park, is they don't have to get permission from the actors to use their faces, because, you know, once in a while they'll use cutouts. Well, all they have to do is get permission from whoever owns that photo. Right. So, like, there's people that have been on there that are pissed that they've been on there with their faces, and there's nothing they can do about it because they don't own that photo. But you're looking at another situation where that's a parody, it's a cartoon. This deepfaking technology is a completely different animal altogether. Yes. And I know we're getting to the deeper aspects of that as we get moving along here. But yeah, like I just found that interesting as we got moving along into the shows. Like at first I'm like, okay, Al Gore, you know, all the presidents make sense, but then we're starting to see other actors and stuff. I'm like, okay, so what do? They have to buy this footage, or how do they work? Because, you know, like the Michael Caine deepfake didn't look that great. But now the Trump ones looked better because obviously there's tons and tons and tons of footage of Trump out there. As opposed to like Michael Caine, you're probably stuck with whatever movies, you know, that they could probably get access to. And I'm sure that's a big part of it. Resolution
of the images you get and what you're feeding into it, and also the time curve on how long the machine renders for before you stop it. I mean, the problem you could see with the Caine one is purely around the neck area, which is a problem area for the deepfake. You're only deepfaking the face. So there is a blur line sometimes. Hence the reason why you saw Fred Sassy's wearing a very kind of good cravat at times, and why certain like the Mark Zuckerberg character worked brilliantly when his head was inside the kind of like giant, you know, kind of face thing, you know. So there are areas where it works, but I mean, you know, but what we're seeing right now, again, and we'll get into this with the tech, is that this is the worst it's going to look. This is the bad. This is where it looks bad. It's only going to get better and better and better and better. And now, obviously, there are ramifications for politics and everything else. Is that, you know, what happens when you start taking a, you know, somebody, a world leader, and having them say something very, very important, you know, like we're on the verge of World War III or something, you know, ridiculous like that. You could face problems there. The internet's a very fast machine where gossip gets spread like wildfire. You could put words into people's mouths and everything else. And surely we're looking at deepfake facial technology, but how long until we have deepfake vocal technology where something analyzes the vocal speech patterns and starts to, you know, to vocode?
Well, according to Scream, we had it 20 years ago, but...
Yeah. Oh, well, look, you know, movies, you know, like...
It's a little throwback to something you've worked on, but I'm just saying.
Someone mentioned Running Man, you know, it's like, yeah, absolutely, you know, and we've heard about face replacements and stuff like that, but this is a different tech. And, you know, the raw bad version of it really is, you know, the same tech that allows you to put your, you know, your face onto your baby's face on your cell phone, or put bunny ears and a bunny nose on your face on your cell phone. Once you can do this stuff on your cell phone, it's going to leap to the big screen, and it is going to leap to the big screen. And that's where we get into what I believe are the huge shifts in the industry that we're about to see, that have ramifications not only for makeup effects artists, not only for makeup artists, but for actors' careers in terms of their longevity, and also for agents and how long they can allow an actor to work for. And people haven't started thinking about this. And once they start doing that, and once producers start catching on to it, we're going to be in a radical shift.
No, you bring up some really great points on it. And again, the technology may not be exactly where it's perfect yet, because, you know, anybody who has a keen eye for, you know, special effects or makeup effects or any of those areas could probably pick it out right away. And even me, somebody who's, you know, seen a lot of films and how things work and how what work's put into them, I mean, I can generally tell a deep fake from a mile away. But there was some good bits in this. Like, you were right. Like, there were some bits in this where, like, they did a pretty darn good job. Other parts, like you said, not so great.
But even the Shamook video, if we look at, like, there are certain shots of Harrison Ford in Solo that Shamook did, and certain shots that we've seen the Travolta playing Forrest Gump, where at certain angles and certain times it is spot on.
Or like the Star Trek one where they had the younger actors over top of the original actors, like that's what I joked to Andre. I'm like, God, I never really realized how much Chris Pine really does look like a young William Shatner, especially from the side. You know, it's like...
So think of this. So think if you're a 30-year-old actor now, you know, you could basically go to a studio in Los Angeles and sit down and have them spend a day with you, where they basically film you from every angle and photograph you from every angle. It's all stored in a computer. every expression you can do, every facial, reaction. They log it all at a high K resolution, and you're logged into that computer. And then basically you can turn around to your agent and say, hey, I can play 30 for the next 40 years.
Well, here's a question for you, since you're in the makeup industry. How much cheaper or easier is it to really do this than it is to actually do a full makeup appliance cost-wise?
Well, there we have stuff like that. And this is where the rubber is going to hit the road. It's not a question.
Or the face, or not the face.
Yeah, the rubber hits the face. This is the big question that a producer is going to ask in the very near future, and is going to cause a schism, a massive thing. Because it's not only the talk. Say we talk about something like Charlize Theron playing Megyn Kelly in Bombshell. So you have a beautiful makeup that is done by Kazuhiro, an Oscar-winning makeup, absolutely flawless, perfection. I mean, they altered her face internally by adjusting the shape of her nose with little interior plumpers, and adding appliances. So a normal day for an actor like that is they get in 3 or 4 hours before everybody else, so their call is way earlier. So Charlize then has to go through 3 or 4 hours of a pretty intense prosthetic makeup, sitting in a chair, having it applied. And I have never in my entire career met an actor who enjoyed having a prosthetic. They enjoy it the first day and the second day. And after that, they pretty much loathe it. They also really hate the 1 hour at the end of the day when you have to peel the thing off. So you apply makeup on someone like Charlize, and then from the moment that makeup is applied, whether it's Charlize Theron as Bombshell or Doug Bradley as Pinhead or anyone playing Pinhead, the makeup from that point on is degrading. It is starting to fall apart. By the nature of the makeup, the glue, everything else, it is starting to actually erode areas around the mouth. We're constantly what we call chasing edges. So all day long, you're poking your actor in the face and making sure they don't eat the wrong foods and having through a straw, and, if they've got a heavy makeup on all day long. So you've got the 4 hours of the actor being brought in early. You've got a makeup artist on set touching them all day long. You've got the hour at the end of the day before, so 5 hours of the actor's day are taken away out of their shooting schedule. You've then got to run appliances for every day, because every day you apply appliances, they have to be taken off and they're destroyed. So you have to run sets of appliances. So if you're doing a brow, a cheek, a nose, and a chin, you have to have, if it's for 60 days, sets of appliances that are ran by a technician and poured in a mold and seamed and trimmed and painted and set out each day. So there's your cost. Or what you could do is you bring Charlize Theron on day one, you apply her into a makeup. She sits in a room and has loads of photos taken of her, loads of digital stuff done to her, video recording done to her, and that's it. And for the rest of the show, she just goes and plays Charlize Theron, maybe with a hairstyle that she's going to have, the hair. And then the makeup is applied digitally. And then afterwards, at the very end, in post, your VFX artist goes in and tweaks any areas that may have little problems, like if there's an edge on the thing. And the thing is, with a lot of these makeups, especially even in Bombshell, they were doing digital tweaks anyway later on with certain areas that had run around on Nicole Kidman's chin and stuff like this. You can see blur lines. So there is some tweaking being done. But what you are looking at then is if you do the deepfake version, and it will become a situation where someone says, I want a cost comparison. How much will a deepfake cost me with some VFX tweaking? And how much does it cost to have our actor not being able to be used for 5 hours a day? A makeup artist applying our makeup, 60 sets of appliances. How much does that cost against this cost? And once the one becomes, once the balance shifts, and one producer says, right, let's see a test, let's try it. I think we will be at the point where in 1993, Phil Tippett, brilliant genius animator that he was, master of Go Motion, stood in a room at ILM and watched a computer test of running gallimimuses for Jurassic Park and said the immortal line of, I think we're extinct. And he was right. And the moment that somebody makes that decision with deepfaking a lead character in a movie, yes, you'll still need a makeup effects artist to design it and to apply it for that one day. But after that, you can apply it digitally. It will be able to be taken care of. And it's only a matter of time then before some evil producer says, so why do we need makeup artists here all the time? anyway? Especially in these COVID times of touching makeup actors and everything else. Can't we just apply their makeup one time and then just deep fake it for the rest of it and have them in that makeup looking, you know, great for the rest of the show? Do they need to be here? You know, maybe for the cut on the cheek when they do that or something. But especially for a makeup effect for a prosthetic character. And once we get into a situation, and I've spoken to this with some pretty heavyweight people within various VFX houses who, when I notioned this technology, they all basically said the same thing, which was like, oh, yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's totally doable and feasible and makes sense. And yeah, cuts down the labor and also cuts down the big thing, which is not having actors tied up for 3 or 4 hours a day in a makeup chair.
Right. And I mean, I can see from your angle as a makeup artist, you know, where this was something that would be kind of scary. But if it makes you, I mean, if it makes you feel any better, and I see a few people already saying it in the chat too, they're kind of like me, like no matter how hard you try, it's always going to end up looking off when it's digital. I am one of those, like, yeah, I can see, even though it's a deep fake and how great it looks, there's still that shiny face problem. There's still that issue of it doesn't always, the uncanny valley, as it's termed, will always be there. And I am not a fan of CGI unless it has to be used. I stopped watching a lot of horror movies for that specific reason, because the thrill is gone. I mean, it's like going to an amusement park and they've replaced the real roller coaster with a digital one. You know,
my answer to that, Tom, has been stock from day one. I'm the same as you. I mean, I spot digital bad stuff all over the place. Absolutely. Right. But the simple reality of this is we are all seeing a lot more digital than we realize. We have no idea how much, you have no idea how many shots are digitally manipulated these days. And as I've said before, and as we all say, digital effects are like hair plugs. When it's done badly, yes, you see it. But there's a lot of people walking around there who've had hair work and you don't know it's been done because it's been done properly. I defy anybody to watch something like The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and tell me that was shot in the summer. You know, you can see the wisps of wind drifting over the snow flurries and everything else.
Oh yeah, there's some good stuff.
The building shots in The Shape Becomes Water, fantastic. If you go and watch the digital side by sides, and the same with the digital character. Yes, now there are times when you watch digital things moving around and you go, it's a digital character. But when you watch something like Avengers Endgame and you see the characters walking towards the time shifting thing and realize they're not in costume, those costumes were created digitally. You can't tell. You can't tell that they're wearing digital suits. You know, when it's done badly and it looks cheap, I guarantee you that I can send you a bunch of shots where I go, did you know that's digital? And people go, that's not digital. And you go, yeah, it actually is.
I'd love to do that test because I'm somebody, I mean, because I'll tell you what.
You realize Robert Downey Jr. is never wearing a suit. He doesn't wear an Iron Man suit at all.
I know. Yeah, I know.
You know, that suit is completely digitally rendered on his body.
I can tell. And yeah.
You can tell, if I send you 2 or 3 shots and say which one's digital and which one's practical, you'll be able to tell me.
Probably could.
Okay.
There's only been a few shots in my life that I've ever been tricked by when going through like special effect things on videos and other things. Because like I watched a movie
Tom, I still say there are shots of those apes in the last Planet of the Apes movie that are phenomenal.
I agree. And actually, I think I said that in my review. Yeah.
And even going back as far as 1993, and this is the weird thing, is in 1993, you know, we saw a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Everything else I thought was a little bit dodgy, but that shot of the Tyrannosaurus Rex coming out of the paddock and coming into the water and leaning down over the truck in the rain, that stuff is still upholds very, very well now. And can, you know, and it looks, and unfortunately, the shots of the big dodgy Stan Winston wobbly rubber thing look equally as dodgy at times as the, you know, that close up of the eye, you know, and the eye retracting, you know, it looks like a big puppet, you know what I mean? So,
oh yeah.
I mean, I think again, you know, I mean, yeah, like I said, and as I prefaced at the very, very beginning, this is as bad as it's ever going to look. But if I was to say to you, watch SNL and on comes an actor wearing a fat makeup going, hello, I'm Sean Connery. And you go, well, that looks really fucking dodgy. That doesn't even look slightly like it. But if you look at Fred Sassy, there's moments when you watch that and you go, it's almost to a point where you're going, that's just a guy, right, doing a voice? Hold on a second, that's Trump's face. That's Donald Trump in a bad wig.
Well, I got to address this because no, I can tell because I know what Gary's saying. Every single shot in almost every single movie is manipulated digitally now, period. And I hate that. I can tell the look of it. That's why I loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because you can tell that like there's hardly any digital manipulation in that movie at all. As much as Tarantino could do in camera, he did. And it looks, and you can tell and you can feel it on the film. There's a look to it, a tangible feel to it, to where there I could actually tell you the couple shots right offhand that I can remember. Like there's one shot in the original Raimi Spider-Man where I'm not even sure why they did it digitally, but they did. And it was one that actually tricked me. And it was when Spider-Man's spinning around to miss the pumpkin bombs. Right. He's digital there. I had no clue. That was one of the best digital shots I'd ever seen. Now, I knew all the stuff around him was digital, but I figured they just had Tobey Maguire spin in front of a green screen, you know? But it does from time to time trick me, but very, very rarely.
Yeah, but Tom, here's the thing though, that many of the times when you are, what you're forgetting is that you're thinking of the obvious CGI scenes. However, as Gary is talking about, there are so many things that you don't even think about, things that are in the backgrounds.
I know, and that's what I meant by the Tarantino thing.
And everything.
That's what I meant by the Tarantino thing, because he has very little manipulation in his newest movie.
Yeah, but he still has some, I guarantee.
Some, yes, I know. There is some. But
yeah.
Compared to like, watching something like The Irishman, that whole movie feels like there's a layer of computer over it. Like the whole movie, it just everything about it.
But there's a great example. Did you look at the deepfake version of that was done?
If there's somebody else did it, no, I just seen the movie itself.
There is a deepfake version where they did deepfaking as opposed to CG, and it's far more interesting and far better looking than what they did. It's far more acceptable to the eye. Absolutely. I mean, I do think to a degree as well, with CGI. I mean, look, I consider myself to be an absolute, very, very good at spotting CGI, because I mean, I've done effects. So I mean, I think, especially when I see blood spatter and stuff like that, I'm very like, that's clearly digital and clearly it doesn't look real at all. But there's a lot of things that we can do in makeup effects that are helped by digital, like hiding blood tubes and lines, and even being able to manipulate something with your hand and just literally take out an arm that is digital. But if you look at The Irishman and what I think it might have been actually Shamouk who did it. He did a side-by-side where he did a deep fake next to the CGI, and it's so much better. Same as they did a deep fake version of the Henry Cavill with the dodgy mustache removal that was done. And I mean, it's heads and tails. It leaps and bounds better. It really, really is. And like I said, again and again and again, this is as bad as it will ever look. And secondly, also, if your brain is being fed a situation where, like, you're seeing a situation where you're seeing a talking ape, clearly your brain is going, well, I know apes don't speak. So you're looking for the man behind the curtain. Do you know what I mean? You're looking at, but I still think that in terms of some cutting edge stuff, we're seeing stuff get better and better all the time, even in terms of digitally fixing makeups or digitally fixing characters. Someone said there, CGI blood is always crappy. Yeah, it's crappy when it's crappy, but when it's done quite well, there's stuff that I've seen that's I'm going.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong, great CGI.
And here's the other thing, you have to consider this, right? Just run with me a second. I understand people saying CGI blood is crappy. Let me just run you through a situation where you're on set. Okay, guys, I've got an hour to shoot a scene where we're going to have Tom Cruise or whoever walk into the room, and I want to get shot here, 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 and here. Bang, 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 bang. Okay, and we've got like a couple of hours. So a special effects guy will go, right, you want here, 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 right? So then he's going to go and take explosive charges and glue them onto pads and put them underneath the actor's shirt with a blood bag over it. And then, he's going to have wires running down his pant legs, down to a thing. So you can't shoot the bottom of his feet unless you're going to digitally remove the wires. But if you did that, there'd be no point because you could digitally the blood. So your actor is then going to walk into the room, and a special effects technician with a thing called a striker board, which is basically a nail and 4 pins. He's going to run it down it, or he's going to hit 4 triggers. And your actor is going to have 4 explosive devices explode. He has to keep his head away from them so they don't go off like this and catch him in the face with anything. And they're going to blow up. Pop, 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 pop. We've all seen it done a million times in the movies. Usually what happens is this. They walk in, it goes pop, 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 pop. Maybe one doesn't go off, so the actor doesn't react to it, or an actor goes fuck because he reacts too big, or what happens is they don't blow properly sometimes, you know, or it blows too big, or you don't see the blood. You just see like a black smear. So then you go cut. Okay, didn't really look very good. Let's look at the playback. You watch the playback. It's not very good. It's like, it's okay. Okay, we need to do it again. So wardrobe then have to come in, and they have to take the shirt off the guy, clean any blood that got on his face, clean him up, make him look perfect. Special effects after they take another t-shirt away, rig it, put the 4 explosive charges under it, wire your actor up, bring him in, get him ready, check the lighting, make sure everything's okay for take 2. You are literally burning through time trying to literally do this thing. And we've all seen, if we look at squib hits on people, where you can see the actor's clearly got like a big lump under his shirt.
Oh, yeah.
Gonna go off. We've all seen that.
Well,
or you can do this. Hey, Tom, I want you to run in here and imagine that one's hit you here, 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 and then we're just going to add 3 blood bags going off on you. No wardrobe cleanup, no damaging our actor with an explosive device, no problems, no running wires, no guy trying to get the timing right, everything else. I'm just going to have you run in and go, and throw yourself backwards. And we'll do 3 blows. Yes, the blood might look a bit dodgy, but is it going to look any dodgier than the giant blood bag thing? Yes, there's a practicalness to it, but it will only get better and better and better and better to the point that you can't tell the difference. And I guarantee, I understand people saying CGI blood looks crappy. I could show you a bunch of movies where I'd go, those are all digital blood hits, and they look really, really good because they were done by a good company with a good VFX supervisor.
Don't get me wrong.
When you've got no money or you've got low money, sometimes you get pretty shitty effects. I remember even Stephen Norrington on Blade. They had a ton of money. And Blue Sky did the ending, the original ending of that movie with the Lamagra blood demon. And I'll never forget Stephen Norrington saying, guys, it's not very good. And they were like, well, that's where $1 million gets you. And he was like, but it looks awful. Can we not improve it? And they were like, not unless you want to write a check and, you know, spend some more money. It was like, that's what you get for the money. We've spent all the money we've got. Sorry, that's what you get.
No, and don't get me wrong. I agree with you on certain points. Like, there's times where, you know, if something practical isn't working, you have no choice, you know. And there's other times where it's necessary, or they should have used CGI where they could have, where sadly, like, a stunt goes wrong and somebody gets hurt or dies. Right. There's no reason for it in the day and age of CGI. That was one thing that upset me about the accident on Deadpool 2. I'm like, why did this happen? This shouldn't happen in an age where we can do these kind of things, and people will forgive, you know, a CGI stunt before they will an appliance, a makeup. Like a great example is one thing that really turned me off this last week in The Mandalorian. They had this really great makeup on this one guy in the early scene that Mandalorian's talking to, but the moment he starts moving his mouth is CGI, and you can tell. And it's like, okay, so you have this really great makeup appliance, and you basically ruined it by putting this crappy animated mouth over it that is clearly animated. I would rather see a much less articulated practical puppet mouth in that instead of an animated mouth. But now if you're talking about a big, you know, sweeping action scene that needs, you know, CGI, and it's going to cost a lot less and cost no lives and all that kind of stuff, it makes sense. And, you know, you brought up Jurassic Park, great example. Spielberg knew how to use the CGI just as little as he could in the first film to make it work. There's like, 61 shots, I think, of CGI in the first film. In the last Jurassic World film, there's over 2,000. Over 2,000. You know, like that.
The real classic ridiculousness is if this, the same animator and the same guy who created that brilliant, you know, Tyrannosaurus Rex in the rain is the same guy who gave us Jabba the Hutt in, you know, the additional sequence in A New Hope with Harrison Ford stepping over the back.
And that looks like garbage, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like sometimes, again, it's just like what the time situation is, everything else. But I mean, those are very, very, you know, strikingly obvious CG characters. You brought up a great point with stunts. And how many, I mean, I'm sorry, but you can watch movies like Mission Impossible. And when you see these car chases and motorcycle chases and realize that all of the additional vehicles in those scenes are all CGI, they're on closed roads with no vehicles around. I mean, you can't tell. Those vehicles look fantastic.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, see, that's the stuff I don't have a problem with. It's when you start getting, and that gets us back to the deepfake point, is like once you start actually getting real people.
Let me ask you about Mandalorian. I've never seen Mandalorian. I've never seen it, right? But I've seen lots of shots of Baby Yoda, which to me is as obvious as the day is long. It's a fucking puppet.
They've done pretty good with it. At first I wasn't sure.
It looks like a Muppet. It moves like a Muppet.
At first I wasn't sure, and then
like, you know, it's a very nice little animatronic.
Yeah, they do a pretty good job with it. I think they did a pretty good job with it.
Two choices, right, in this world. You've got puppet, animatronic, or the real thing. So,
well, I'll tell you this though: that puppet is the most famous thing, or the biggest money-making thing that Star Wars Disney has had yet. I guarantee you.
Yeah, right. And Kermit the Frog, right? I don't get away from it. You know what I mean? I mean, you know, and and Yoda to me in Empire Strikes Back. I mean, what a ridiculous situation there, where you have, you know, Stuart Freeborn's hand up a rubber puppet made by Stuart Freeborn. Sorry, Frank Ozzy's hand up a rubber puppet made by Stuart Freeborn. And yet, with all the technology in the world, they came up with the, you know, the horrible. I mean, the puppet that was sculpted for the for Phantom Menace was a silicone skin. They spent time over it. I knew the guys who sculpted it, and it looked horrible. It's like something goes wrong sometimes with all the best will in the world. It really does. And again, I agree with you a lot of the time is that, you know, nothing looks dodgier than bad CGI. But we can also go back and look at the 1980s, and there's a lot of really dodgy makeup effects with bad edges, and, like, you know, it was like for a while in the early 80s, every producer in the world was like, we need bladder change, you know, you know what I mean? Or
that is indeed accurate.
I love Robo Team's work, you know, but I mean, makeup effects industry people, you know, we've all been doing impersonations of Arnold Schwarzenegger for years, going
But no, it's the same thing in computer too. It started off with the whole morphing thing is where it kind of began. Is like, as soon as somebody does it, it was, you know, same thing with like the makeup effects in American Werewolf in London. Everybody wanted to do bladders, you know, like you were just saying. Well, it's the same thing with CGI. It's like, as soon as somebody does bullet time or morphing, then every movie wants to do it. And deepfake is that next thing. I think you're right. I think it's it could have some really great applications. It could have some extremely dangerous applications, and it could have some extremely
just like you
applications.
Just like you mentioned with Spielberg in Jurassic Park, the key is going to be when somebody like, you know, somebody like a David Fincher or a Scorsese sees a test and says, okay, I'll commit to it. I'm going to commit to you doing an aging make. We're going to have Jared Leto in this next movie. He's going to be young, and then for the mid, I'm going to put him in a makeup, and then we'll just deep fake it. We won't need the application time every day. You know, you don't need tracking parts on the actor. You don't need, like they did the Irishman, to shoot with multiple cameras, getting different, light levels and stuff like this. You can shoot with a regular camera. It's a software application. So once somebody like that sees a test and says, you know what, Jared Leto in this movie ages from 30 to 60 to 90, so I'm going to shoot him as Jared Leto for the first part of it, and then I want him putting the makeup for one day, and we'll shoot lots of reference footage, and it'll be deep faked, and then for the final part, we'll put him in the makeup for one day, shoot all our reference footage and deep fake him, and then we'll tweak it digitally. If somebody does that and it works, and you literally have a situation where you don't have a prosthetic makeup artist on set applying a makeup every day and touching him up and there to make sure that Jared looks great, that's a shift. That's a big jump where suddenly makeup artists are going home and they're not on set every day, and makeup effects houses aren't making 60 sets of appliances, they're making 2 sets of appliances. That's a big shift. And also then CG animators are no longer required. You're looking at a software situation. But like I also said, you've got I mean, to me, if anyone should be funding this technology and looking into it, it should be agents, because agents should be literally coming in their pants right now going, whoa. Are you saying that we can have Megan Fox play 21-year-old Megan Fox for the next 20 years while her body's still okay, you know? Yeah, guys.
Yeah, this would have come in handy during the last It movie, which, because the kids aged way too much between the two, and it was so noticeable. And I also brought it up.
As bad as everyone said, but again, think, you know, like someone like, again, specifics. Someone like Gerard Butler, someone I know, Jerry hasn't aged great in the last couple of years. He's just developed a lot of wrinkle lines on his face, and he's got a little bit kind of heavy set and a bit of a kind of a squirrel cheek thing going on. You know, if you were to deepfake him 10, 15 years ago, physically he's still in the same kind of situation. So you could literally just tweak his look facially to make him more kind of, appealing to the ladies kind of thing.
Well, there was another example I brought up actually just yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, and that was the sequel to The Shining. What's it called? Dr. Sleep.
Dr. Sleep, yeah.
They've got whoever the actress is they got playing Shelley Duvall's character. If they would have just deep faked her face on there, I would have thought it was Shelley Duvall, because she sounds and the body and everything like that. And Henry Thomas does a decent enough job again, where if you would have just deep faked Jack Nicholson's face on him, that would have sold that movie even more.
Now, I think we're getting into a dodgy situation, because I do have a problem with, I mean, if legitimate actors are around and they're having work,
I get you there.
People playing another character, I have a problem. But if they're playing themselves in a role, like, I mean, if we see a deep fake, and I've challenged Shamook to do this, what I'd love to see is take Charlize Theron's Megyn Kelly face, you know, from Bombshell, and put it on her in Prometheus. You know what I mean? I want to see how she looks in that movie. I want to see Charlize Theron in another movie, but with her in a prosthetic makeup. If that works and looks feasible because you're fitting onto the same face structure and the same body and everything else, then we are seeing a makeup applied digitally by deepfake. And that is when you take away the need for the makeup effects artists, the makeup artists on set, turnaround times, 4 hours of application, an hour of removal, etc., etc., etc. And it's based on how good a quality of images you get now. So doing stuff from 20 years ago and everything else, you're gathering grainy footage, you know, not quite brilliant footage. But if you can shoot it now as a high quality, you know, it's going to open huge doors. And I know people are like, oh, so and so could play this and so could play that, and young actor this. It's like, I'm not.
Well, it's already happening. Yeah. Well, no, what I'm saying is, if you got permission from the actors, that would have totally sold that film even more. Is my point, and that's where I say it could be something that could be used for, you know, it could be used and applied in a way that works and everybody's on board. But, you know, you get to the dangerous aspects of this, and I think that's the part we haven't really touched on too much, right, Andre, as far as like where this could go in the future, as far as, you know, how it's going to affect things. And
absolutely. And before we get into that, which is the final thing we'll do before we move on to the next topic, we have some super chats to go through.
What I wanted to say, Andrew, before we get to super chats, was just, if you imagine now, like, even if you'd have done like Tony Hopkins 20 years ago, you could have Tony doing a movie now where when you do flashbacks, it's not bad CGI, it's Tony, you know what I mean? It's going to open huge doors. And I think people knowing the technology and seeing it, and we are seeing some very, very, very high quality deepfakes done, which are being done for fun. They're being done by people at home. They're not being done on studio projects. I was just
going to say, somebody go fix Red Dragon. There you go.
Yeah, right. There you go. There's an example.
Someone go fix Tron Legacy. And that's the
also
a fun thing. If you look at Rogue One, where you had like CGI replicas of Grand Moff Tarkin and young Leia. Some people have, I don't recall if it was exactly who it was, but on YouTube, some deep faker went and they deep faked that instead of CGIing it.
They did. The same person
and the deep fake was better, much better than
It was, but also it wasn't great because the images of Peter Cushing are gathered from film, not digital, and not brilliant. You know, they're gathering only what the computer is fed in. I mean, and literally, it's a case of feeding in every angle, every look, every expression, so that the computer can fill in the gaps. But if you give it really great images and really great stuff, and let it render and let it crunch the data, it will produce some brilliant. But it's only as good as the images that you gather, which is why I'm suggesting.
Right.
And you'll see it happen. We will see it happen. I would bet money on it that within a couple of years there'll be a facility in Los Angeles called the DF housing, where actors will go along and spend a day being data gathered, doing scenes, acting, crying, acting upset, to basically log their current facial identity. And maybe a makeup artist will go with them and make sure they look good. And it will be logged and photoed and everything else at high resolution. Like I say, it'd be something to me that it would make sense that the agents have, so they can turn around to their clients and say, oh, you want so stuff for this movie? Well, we've got him data stored at 20, data stored at 30, data stored at 40. So if you're doing any age transformations, and it will become part and parcel of the package and something that actors will do. Because like I say, especially for women, how many women get cast aside at 25 because there's another 21-year-old on the market when physically they're still the same, acting they're still brilliant, but they're not quite fresh enough? Whereas you could extend that acting on camera life by 10, 20 years easily.
Yeah. Indeed, indeed. And with that, let's get into some super chats. Casey Asowski said, "What upsets me about deepfakes is that soon it may become hard to know what is real." And sent us another $5 saying, "Hello, gents. I prefer the real deal, but I understand why it's used as long as it's not abused."
Exactly.
Is
Yeah.
this being used in movies when an artist agrees? Well, so far it's not. But what I'm curious about is, when are we going to get Romance of the Pink Panther? That was the movie that Peter Sellers died during the filming of. That script still exists. Now, can you deepfake him and finish up that movie?
Oh boy. That goes to kind of what Gary was talking about, like that gray area of.
Yeah.
I think the time has passed for a Pink Panther.
Yeah, and that's
then again, I'd rather have that than I would another fucking Steve Martin one. And I love Steve Martin, don't get me wrong, but that has got to be his worst choice ever.
He wasn't the biggest problem there, but yeah, I see what you say. Anyway, Adam Wofford has a similar note. He says, "Remember an episode of Tell, some crypt where they Humphrey Bogart in it?
Tales from the Crypt."
Okay. And it was from a couple of his movies that they used in the episode. Yeah, you see there?
I believe that was the Robert Zemeckis episode, wasn't it? And that was where he was playing around with his Forrest Gump technology.
Exactly, which is it's delicate and horrible, and it's again face replacement, and it's a different tech.
Well, yeah. Speaking of, even look at Forrest Gump, how bad that looks now. Holy shit! I mean, I didn't think it looked that great then. I was one of those people who was just like, I don't think it's that great.
No, I absolutely hated what he did technology-wise with Beowulf and that Christmas thing and all of that. So thank God we don't have much
Michael
more of that.
Jackson probably did more for CGI than a lot of the films.
Yeah. But moving on, we're almost up to date. Planar Aspect said, "Nearly all of The Mandalorian is filmed in front of a LED set that runs full set background built in the video gaming Unreal Engine. It's insane." And Miss Martin Musa sent us a flower sticker, so thanks for that. But yeah, that's actually pretty amusing, because The Mandalorian, there the backgrounds are real-time CGI. Which is like the Mando tech, which is going to be pretty commonplace in Hollywood, I should imagine. And
well,
then deepfaking on top of that.
The Mando LED tech, the volume, is great for certain things. It really, really is. But also the technology that Favreau was using on Lion King, which is to digitally create an environment and then to enter that environment with Oculus glasses on. I mean, again, guys, let me just be a bit of a dick here for a second, which isn't too hard for me to do, I know. But when digital filming started happening a few years ago, I was like saying, digital tech, it's going to take over. And DPs were arguing with me saying, there's something about film. It's got this real texture to it, and it's celluloid, and it's living, and it's amazing. And I was like, yeah, I understand all the hairy-fairy baloney, but running a strip of celluloid through a camera is a analog technology in the digital world. I understand it, but it's going to go bye-bye. It's just going to happen, guys. People aren't going to walk around with cameras with a roll of fucking 34 shots, stick in the camera and wind it on and then post it to the camera store and have it developed. It's not going to happen. It's going to be digital. No, it'll never look the same. Whether it looks the same or not, it's going to be easier to do, right?
I think we finally got there, but yeah, sorry.
Yeah, right. Same as, right? You want me to take an actor and then glue some rubber on their face for 4 hours every morning and then go around poking them all day long and painting it with paint while you shoot them, and at the end I'm going to peel it off their skin. It's an analog technology, right? We're gluing shit onto people's faces. It's a bit of a, it's an old step. Clearly there's got to be a new way forward. Same as, I know we want to make a film in the mountains, so we'll drive 100 people up there in buses, and we'll have food for them and toilets, and we'll helicopter them onto a rock plateau in Norway to shoot Mission Impossible because it looks so lovely, right? And cost a fortune, and have helicopters landing and taking off to bring up sandwiches for actors and all that. It's analog. It's old school. Do you know what I mean? Yes, you can all say, "Oh, it looks so fantastic." It's like, yeah, but it's a pain in the ass. We can recreate that in a volume, the whole Nordic fjord, you know, digitally, and then I'll meet you and Andre and everyone in there in our digital glasses where we can walk around the set and I can say, I want to shoot here, an angle here. And whether you like it or not, it's easier, it's cheaper, and it's going to look better. It's going to look the same eventually anyway, but it makes sense. It's like, yeah, I understand we're robbing the essence of the very fabric of cinema and it's killing our beautiful hearts inside. But like I say, we're going to take 150 people up a hill and have toilets for them and feed them and caterers and all that. And it's terrible. People are going to lose their jobs, but it's going to happen because some dick with a calculator is going to go, guys, I've just ran the cost. Do you know how much money we spend on toilet paper and how much sandwiches and second meal and all that and transporting all these people and flying them all in? Whereas
especially with Norwegian prices.
Well, not just that. I was going to say, I think after post, Coof, I think that's what the movie industry is going to have to look like. They're going to have to figure a way to minimalize as many people that are on set and do it for a cost that is much below what they're doing. Yeah.
I hate to be I don't want to be the Ides of March. Do you know what I mean? And like, I'm sorry, but someone, and I don't want it to be, because I love cinema and I love the process of filmmaking and I love going into a real place and filming. But someone's got to raise their hand and go, guys, I know we don't like it, but I think that's the road we're all going down.
Oh, I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah.
You know
I agree with you completely, and that's what we're seeing in the Mandalorian already. Like, there, the backgrounds are all digital, made in Unreal, and it's not going to be long before you have the backgrounds in Unreal and the actors deep faked in real time, and then you're basically rotoscoping.
Now already, when they go on locations, they photo everything and panoramic it all and get it a high. They basically radar the whole thing and log it all in, and like I say, I like going to places. It's always great. I get paid to go to these wonderful locations and get a vacation in some foreign country. It's great, you know what I mean? Yeah, I get to spend time in Rome shooting it. But unfortunately, like I say, someone's going to figure out that, we don't need to do that. We can just actually create it all in a volume space. And you won't even enter it, Gary. You'll be in a big black room. One of the reasons why I don't really want to work in the film industry in that capacity anymore. And it's like, and yeah, I know I'm saying gluing shit to people's faces, and it's awful because that's how I've made a living. That's how I bought a house, for Christ's sake. I've been the guy gluing shit, but it really, when you come down to it, that's it. I'm afraid I am. I'm gluing a piece of rubber, a piece of foam onto their skin, and it's been done brilliantly and it's been done badly, just like CGI, right? You get Rick Baker do it. Rick Baker applied foam latex, not silicon, foam latex appliances to Eddie Murphy's face in Coming to America and in Nutty Professor, and it looks amazing. Yeah. I could apply that same makeup and it would probably look like crap. It's all comes down to how good you do it, and it can be done correctly, just like CGI. But unfortunately, that's where it's moving. Like I say, I'm sorry to be the guy doing it, but it's like, when my friend Gino Acevedo, when he did Planet of the Apes, he apparently had every makeup effects artist in Hollywood calling him up saying, "Gino, we're here doing Planet of the Apes. Yay, time to sculpt apes and do makeups." And he was like, "Sorry guys, hate to tell you, but it's going to be digital makeups." And they were like, "Boo, you work for the enemy now. How dare you?" But you look at those movies now and realize you couldn't have it with actors in makeups. You couldn't.
Oh, no, not for the new ones. And I know Andre's not a big fan of them, but me, especially of those last two, and that last one, really, I'm like, there are some shots, like you said, I know this is CGI, but it's like, it looks so good. And we were getting to that point. Like, and again, I can see it already. At post, all this stuff going on to be able to cut costs, cut everything down. You're right. I think that from now on, the main deal is going to be, they're going to go make 3D backgrounds of everything, no matter where you want to film. It's like, oh, you want to film downtown New York? Okay, great. You just send a guy down there. He gets a 3D, filming of an entire street of whatever you want. Then you get 2 or 3 actors and a camera guy and a sound guy and whatever, you're got a couple grips and whatever you need just to kind of your base minimum. And that's what a lot of this stuff is going to probably be in the next few years, as far as filming a scene. And unless, even crowded scenes are probably going to be done in sections until this whole stupid situation we're dealing with is under some kind of control anyway. But yeah.
I haven't seen Mandalorian. I haven't seen any of it. I'm not Disney Plus. How does it look?
Sometimes good. Other times not so good. It looks better when you can tell like they're adding some atmosphere to the foreground. Like the best shots are when they have like, you know, a lot of mist in the foreground and it blends into the background nicely. But on the nice clear shots, there's times where people, I haven't really had a problem with it yet, but people have said they could, you know, tell it was the LED screen, which I mean, I could tell the background is not real, but I have yet to kind of tell, is this really, you know, somebody just standing in front of a screen? Yeah.
What I will say about it is that it looks a whole hell of a lot better than quite a few movies from just a few years ago that also had like digital backgrounds or matte paintings or what have you not. It looks much more convincing in that. It certainly looks much more convincing than the prequels, which were all this revolutionary stuff like that. This is a million times better. So can you tell? Yeah, you can kind of tell in some scenes, but you know what? You always know that this is a different world and everything like that. And I will say that this is right up there or better than many big blockbuster movies from just a few years ago that had a combination of real life footage augmented by digital matte paintings like you've seen in Prometheus and stuff. I will absolutely say that what you have in The Mandalorian is better than that, where you for instance have like Iceland but augmented.
Right, and you also get I think that the fact that you have the background shooting off light too helps, because that's one thing I feel like that makes you feel like the character, because that makes you feel like the character is actually there, as opposed to when you do a green screen effect, they never can seem to get that lighting right for some reason, no matter how hard they try. To me,
this is why some of the deepfakes aren't so standouty, because usually at a low budget level, you know, the light emanating on the face of the deepfake isn't matching the light.
Exactly.
A lot of CGI is enhanced purely by lighting, and making sure that you get the same source light and everything else is key. I just want to. You've got a super chat here from Darius who's saying makeup and costume also helps the actor get into character. As somebody who's worn makeup and got into character, yeah, it does on the first day. After that, it's a pain in the ass. You know, it loses its fun. You know what the character is, and you can't see it once you're wearing it. So yeah, when you look in the mirror and you're wearing it that first day, and you spend a lot of time looking in the mirror and seeing your character, absolutely. And sitting in the chair, you look at yourself, and it definitely you can draw on it. But I guarantee you that I have met maybe one or two actors who thoroughly enjoy the laborious process of being applied every day into a prosthetic makeup. And like I say, especially when you have to come in at 3 a.m. in the morning and apply your makeup and then be ready for 8 o'clock when the whole crew are just turning up fresh as a daisy and ready for the day's work, and you've been there 5 hours already.
Yeah.
And then they all start eating breakfast and you can't, because you're wearing this stuff around your mouth, and if you eat it, it's going to damage the side. So they're all tucking into their breakfast burritos, and you get to have something through a straw. And then you work until lunchtime, and you can't eat lunch because you've got your makeup on. It's going to damage your makeup. Or if you're in a really good situation, someone can peel your lip off and they'll apply another lip for you. But usually you'll sit eating a meal with your prosthetic makeup artist glaring at you, making sure you don't damage it. So you eat very little, and then you shoot for the rest of the day, and then everyone gets to run off home, and then you have to go to a makeup trailer while two people with brushes dipped in a remover basically peel the layer of skin off. You know, and it leaves the skin feeling pretty raw and red. And then you get in your car, or you drive home, or you're driven home, and then you come back in at 3 a.m. in the morning. And usually that makeup artist is there an hour before you and an hour after you as well. So that poor bastard's, usually me. But yeah, it does help you get in character on the first day. But trust me, you're quite willing to let that all go by the by. If someone said to you, we can bypass all of this whole makeup thing you have to do every day, and you can eat normally, and it's going to look exactly the same. And here's the thing as well, Tom and Andre, is that we are probably only a couple of years away before some very smart, savvy tech chappy is able to develop a piece of software where the deepfake engine will be ran through the camera to the monitor. So what you're looking at on the monitor will be, you 50 years, in your, we'll be looking at Charlize Theron being filmed on the camera, but on the monitor we'll be looking at Charlize Theron as Megyn Kelly.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I was saying. That is just a matter of time, I think, before you have the Mandalorian backgrounds and deep faked foregrounds or actors done in real time, and then basically what you have is a modern version of rotoscoping, but it's gonna look almost indistinguishable from the real thing.
But I want to
cool. Yeah, Tom, and then some super chats after you
I was
have
gonna
your
say,
say.
I want to get into super chats right after, and we got to get on to the next subject. But no, when some hacks is right here, George Lucas is actually completely responsible for this new technology. Because if you go back and watch one of the behind the scenes of the prequels, he sits there and goes, you know, one of these days we'll be able to do this in real time. I got these game guys. You should see the stuff they're doing. I won't have to do any of this stuff. Like, it'll all be done. I'll be able to see it in camera.
That's scary.
That's exactly what he said.
No, and I'm
someone deepfake George Lucas onto Tom. And
I just need the wig.
And I'm quite sure if George were the fourth person on his super chat, he'd go, yeah, it's obvious as the day's long. It's going to happen, guys. You know, it's just a question of when. You're looking at purely a situation where tech will catch up with it, and then it makes 100% sense, because the one thing that you're always chasing on set is time and putting actors, you know, you're paying $20 million for an actor. You don't want to spend 6 hours of their day sitting in a makeup room. So, yeah, it's all about cutting down time, and especially in the future with the coronavirus wars and all this kind of stuff, and people being terrified of touching each other on set and having people in each other's faces. I mean, I've been on a number of films where I've worked on actors, and on day one, they've walked in with a streaming cold. Isabella Scrocco, first day on Exorcist Beginning, she walked in holding tissues, eyes bright red and bloodshot, going, "Oh, I'm so sick. I've been so ill." Like, oh. And then I was like, "Oh, well, I better get ready for the flu for the next 3 weeks. I'm going to be as sick as a dog." And I was, because I'm leaning over her face, breathing her air, gluing down her eyes and her lips. It was like, well, I've got whatever she's going to give me, you know, and it's going to happen. So, again, in terms of a technology that's going to cut down the amount of physical contact and an interaction between human beings. Like I say, I hate having to say this. I feel like I'm betraying everybody, but it's like, really, I've had a conversation with makeup artists going, guys, you need to be prepared. I'd hate to be a 21, 22-year-old getting into the makeup industry, hoping to be the next Rick Baker, saying, guys, they are moving the goalposts on you. It's going to happen. If you think you're going to be applying bladder makeups and having people going, oh, with rubber glued on their face, it's going to happen, guys. You're going to sculpt some nice makeups and you'll apply them, but get ready for some major change-ups in the industry.
Yeah, I think it might be a good idea to learn some side job as well, because I agree with you completely. I see that. I see what you're saying. That the makeup that's going to be needed for the first day when you do all of that photography, and then you deepfake the rest. I absolutely think that this is where we're going, and the traditional makeup appliances outside of that first day is going the way of the Ray Harryhausen stop motion technology. I absolutely think that there's a very, very fair comparison right there.
Well, again, as a counter to that, Andre, what I would say is I think there'll always be certain directors or certain budget levels that need it to happen and that require it, and like will tolerate it and be into it. Like me, I could saying, oh, I'd rather be a makeup for 3 days or whatever. But again, it's all a question of seeing how it looks, right, how it works. Again, like you talk about Ray Harryhausen technology, yet we all love The Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, digital animation has a look and a feel. There are some things for practicalities, but in the same way as we saw television revolutionized by the creation of digital sets like Law and Order and things like this, where clearly they're using digital backgrounds at places like CBS Radford in Los Angeles and recreating New York, it's already happened. I think we're looking at, you know, an organic shift now of changing human faces. And again, like I say, I'm talking about taking actors. So we're not putting a different face on a regular actor. We're talking about putting their face that has been manipulated with the makeup, and then having them still perform the character. You know, them. We're not stealing anything from them or having, you know, somebody play James Dean. You know what I mean? We're talking about, like I say, a character that person's created, and I just think it's potentially a cheaper and more it's an easier technology to use than gluing something to someone's skin and having it played with it. I mean, you've all heard the stories about Jim Carrey going out of his mind on The Grinch, you know, and I'm saying that 70 days of having a makeup applied to you, and somebody like Kazoo manipulating, you know, basically upkeeping that makeup, who's very in your face and checking it, you know, he made Jim go a bit loopy, you know, and I'm sure Jim just said, hey, we can do this digitally, Jim, you know, you don't need to wear it for a couple of days while we stick you in a studio and log you. I'm sure it'd have been, oh, righty then, let's do that.
And I mean, the chat's bringing up some really great questions and points. And Willie, who sent us a super chat here recently, had a great question earlier that we didn't get to address, but I want to address real quick. What do we think might happen? Like, could this deepfake technology be something that could be outlawed at some point? Do you guys think? That is a great question, especially in a day and age where, you know, in a political arena, say, or something like that, where somebody does use it, and, you know, or how it could be. They could say, well, no longer is video admissible in a court of law because we can't believe it. We've literally gotten to that point where we see in movies where we used to laugh because, you know, they can't do that, but now they can. You know, it's like,
yeah, I think I wouldn't want to see somebody, you know, making a mockery of if they took your face and put you having you saying ridiculous stuff, or put you in a porn film. I mean, you know, again, if this technology becomes to a situation where it's super duper cheap and available to the masses, what's to not stop every porn house in Chatsworth, California saying, hey, great, we can have a porn movie now with Tom Cruise missile having sex with so-and-so. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you know, where does it stop? And again, there has to be protection of people's physical rights, you know. And it is scary to know, again, like I say, in the same way that in the 1960s or the 50s when Orson Welles did the radio show of the War of the Worlds and people genuinely believed that the world was being invaded by aliens, you know, at what point does a viral video of somebody saying that, a president has just declared war on somebody or said something outlandish about Kim Jong-un, you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, or declare, like you said, declare war. Well, and here's the thing is, like you brought up, you know, the Michael Caine bit earlier in the video that spawned this whole conversation. And I think they made him look like shit on purpose. And the reason is the voice is so spot on. That's the joke. Right. And the point they're making in that is that even though he doesn't look right, and that's the joke they keep giving to you, is because they found somebody who could just do a dead on Michael Caine, which is an easy impersonation, but it's also an easy one to go, okay, somebody's doing an impersonation of Michael Caine, and whoever they got doing that is so dead on. I think that was the whole point of making the deepfake look bad. Like I said, it's part of the joke, but also hitting the point home, because whether you liked the show or not, the one thing that Trey and Matt always do is they don't let anything get away from them, and they make fun of everything. Like, I mean, I can tell it, no matter which side of the aisle you fall on, you may have a problem one way or the other with how this deals with politics. But I think this show actually did make some good points as far as deepfake goes, especially to this question of how far can this go? And will there be a point where somebody goes, well, wait a minute, that isn't me. And maybe it could be, and maybe it couldn't be. And we all can't question it because it looks and sounds just like the real thing. I
think undoubtedly that whoever was doing the Michael Caine impression was absolutely doing a bloody brilliant. It was clearly a middle-aged, not the old Michael Caine, what you saw in Batman, but it was clearly a bloody good Michael Caine, and I think it was Peter Serafinowicz who was doing it.
But Joe's Revenge era.
You get the right voice on there, and it's same as the guy who's the kind of Tom Cruise impersonator. There are times when he is spot on as well. There's a great Tom Cruise meets Dustin Hoffman, and at times the lighting on his face isn't great, but the Dustin Hoffman's really, really brilliant deepfaked. So yeah, look, again, like we've said again and again and again, right now is as bad as it's ever going to look. It's only going to look better and better and better.
But do we really think that the government's going to step in, or governments, plural?
How do you again, you're talking about technology that can be done, you know, it's a very simple program. Somebody sent me a Halloween thing of them as Jack Sparrow in the movies, and it was pretty bloody good.
Right.
You know, it was pretty fucking good.
Andre,
I can
think about this.
Yeah, I can tell you the answer right away. The governments are not going to step in and ban deepfaking. Period. Simply not going to happen. Why? Because it only makes it easier and cheaper what you can already do with CGI.
Okay, so then the next question, as far as the in courts and stuff, then
yeah, and courts and stuff like that. Well, just look at right now. You have like some very, very major social media platforms that are actively suppressing information and doing basically election interference, and they're getting away with it. No one is stopping them. So no, I think that is greatly exceeding the powers of government, courts, and everything. I think the only thing that's going to happen is that. If, for instance, someone were to deepfake Peter Sellers or Sean Connery, may he rest in peace, or something like that, without the necessary approvals, then there's going to be a court injunction that you need so and so permission before you can deepfake anyone. I think that's as far as it's going to go. And with that, we have some super chats to get to before we get into the next topic, which is the whole Ray Fisher debacle. But before then, let's hear what you all have to say about the deep faking. Fantastic Dimension says, deep fake tech will only get better, and that is both awesome and frightening at the same times. You guys are great. Love your channel. Oh, thank you so much. And Dreamer Out There says, Wayne Pigram, Scorpius from Farscape, played Tarkin for a scene in Star Wars Episode 3. Wish they had just gotten him for Rogue One. And Rhetorical Thrill says, what Zemeckis did to the witches is unforgivable. Well, I wouldn't know. I was going to see it. But I'm sure you're right. And Pablo Papano says, Gary, you're right. But movies and TV shows today are worse because you don't feel the difficulty and craftsmanship anymore. Actually, I think it's more to do with the producing and script writing, but that's just me. And Adam Wofford says, I saw an ad about a face switching app where you can put different actors' faces on different actors' face, like Tom Cruise's face removed and replaced with a different actor's face.
Yeah, a lot of people have been doing Arnold Schwarzenegger ones and certain things like that, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like, I think that the only thing that's going to happen is that you might have some kind of injunction against that specific sort of thing, but no more generalized than that. And he also said in a follow-up tweet, or follow-up super chat, sorry, think about having actors make up changes without going to the makeup trailer, and we can have real alien-looking characters, indeed. And Willie Woodward said, thanks, Tom, for putting up bugging you in the chats.
He's been asking some great questions and bringing up a lot of points, but like I said, like all you guys are, and this is a very touchy subject on certain things. I get that. And again, we're only giving our opinions based on what we know. You know, Gary's in the industry, and Andre and I, you know, we do our, you know, what we know for the channel, but that's the best we can go on. And I mean, as far as like, you know, the best answer I can give without being any kind of, you know, law professor or anything like that, is that I know when it comes to the only thing I can see coming in the way of some of this deep faking stuff is, you know, like I said, with South Park, they know they have to get the rights from the person who took the picture to use it in South Park. So is that kind of law going to transfer over to deep fake then? And then it goes, okay, well then what are people allowed to use for that deep fake technology? And that goes to what Gary said about, you know, actors going in and actually having their, you know, persons digitally mapped out for every so many years. Is that going to become a thing? And then you can basically wrench yourself out to somebody like, oh yeah, we want Johnny Depp circa 19, you know, 2000, well, now they'd have to do it 2000, whatever, you know, and they're like, oh yeah, we got him, you know, like Gary said, you know, and that's the thing, you know, and then you just get Johnny to come in there, do the bit, and then you map over his younger self. So yeah.
But I remember on Mission Impossible 2, when we did the masks of Tom, for the kind of, you know, pulling away masks I was working for the company that made those masks. And when the live cast was done on Tom, we had to do a live cast and a dental cast, and we even did a cast of his face so that the glasses that he wore at the very beginning would fit perfectly with his ear, and the earpiece would fit in. But there were documents signed saying that all of the molds and everything would be destroyed, and that none of it was allowed to be used in any way. So Tom was very apparently he'd had a bad situation where some of his live casts had got out there or something and had been passed around or sold. And there was a lot of stuff about, I remember, you know, protecting his likeness and stuff like that. So you've got to imagine that if they were that strict about just his face cast and his teeth and stuff like that, it's like then how sensitive must he be about seeing his image on people doing deep fakes and stuff like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. That's what I imagine. That's where you're going to get into some issue. And Tom, we had one more super chat. If you want to take that one before we move into the next topic.
Mr. Willie Woodward sends in another $5 super chat. Says, Mr. T, I think he's addressing another person in the chat. There's a tech that makes miniatures and makeup easier. You can. Oh, he's talking to Gary Tunnicliffe. Duh. You can 3D print different materials, so you can do smart thing and do a combo of the two. So what he's talking about is like the 3D printing technology and all that kind of stuff. Again, that's another avenue of.
We're already implementing 3D printing technology. Most makeup effect studios have 3D printers now, and there are all sorts of stuff being done that's very interesting with 3D printers. Same as a lot of things are being digitally sculpted now. A lot of people who used to what we call push clay, great sculptors of the manipulating clay, have switched over to things like ZBrush and stuff like that, where everything is sculpted in a computer and then modeled, and printed out afterwards, either printed or milled in foam afterwards. So it happens all the time. I mean, especially for things like suits and armor and stuff like that. Legacy Effects, I know, who are owned by the guys who previously worked for Stan Winston. All their suits and stuff are done through digital printing. So it's a great technology that a few years ago everyone was kind of umming and ahhing about, but is now used on a daily basis. And I know makeup effect studios who say, yeah, we couldn't exist without our 3D printers.
Yeah, indeed. And with that, let us move into the next topic of the day, which is very far removed from deep faking. Instead, it's some very, very real conflicts. It's actor Ray Fisher, who you all remember, well, maybe you don't even remember him, from Justice League. And the original plan was after that he starred or co-starred in Justice League. And in the Snyder cut of the movie, he was apparently the heart and soul of the movie. And from there on, he would be one of the actors to get his own solo movie. Like, this is 2020. This was the year when the Cyborg solo movie was supposed to come out in accordance with Zack Snyder's original roadmap. Clearly, that didn't happen, and he was very supportive of the Joss Whedon cut of the movie when it came out. But since he has retracted that support in very, very forceful words, and initially he then claimed that he was subject to abusive behavior from Joss Whedon on set, and that Whedon was enabled by the Supremos of DC at the time, which were help me out here, Tom. What were the names again? I've said it so many times, I've forgotten it.
John Berg, is it?
John Berg and
Johnson Berg.
Johnson
Berg, yeah, Johnson Berg. That guy. Those guys were the Supremos of DC at the time, and he basically said that they enabled Joss Whedon's abusive behavior on set. And later, much more recently, he has also claimed that there were instances of, I can't even say the word on this platform, of racism.
Racism?
Yeah, exactly, that thing right there, claiming that they were openly debating with another actor that we don't quite like the blackness of this person's skin, so we're gonna brighten it because that's going to fit better with the overall color scheme, and other similar claims like that. So, like, this is now getting more and more serious, these accusations. And in terms of Johns and Berg, they're no longer with Warner. They're no longer producers. They were ousted after the Whedon cut of Justice League failed in theaters. However, there are other head honchos at Warner who are still there and who he also implicates by name. Now, my question is, who is the one getting into trouble over this? is he going to get these Warner head honchos in trouble? Is he going to get Joss Whedon retroactively into more trouble? Or is Ray Fisher, by doing this, burning bridges and future opportunities in the industry himself? Your thoughts on this is something I would be very interested to hear. Tom, let's first hear your take before we let Gary have his say.
Well, first of all, I gotta say up front, we obviously don't know all the ins and outs of this. This is like a he said kind of situation. You have some people backing up Ray's claims. Other than that, I gotta say this. I really wish Ray wouldn't make me have to stick up for Joss Whedon, because I don't like the guy. I really fucking don't. But all I've heard outside of up until this whole skin lightening thing, nothing has sounded racist, but has sounded more like a young actor who has never really worked on a movie before, who's plucked directly off of Broadway and thought he was Ben Affleck. Thought he could come in and just say, well, look, I have these ideas and I don't understand why this director and this writer aren't working with me, and so isn't, giving me what I want or need as an actor. And again, the things we heard before were things like he didn't want to say booyah. Okay, well, that's something the character has said for many, many years. And this is something you should have brought up ahead of time, not when they're sitting there waiting to film. And he also brought up the incident with Ezra Miller and Gal Gadot, where they were uncomfortable with the whole, Flash falling between Wonder Woman's boobs things. And I get it to a point, but it's also, they weren't naked. It wasn't a sex scene. And I could see little things like that when you've got a lot of people working and a lot of money being spent holding up a production. It doesn't come off good and making you look good as an actor. And again, I get it. Maybe Ray Fisher had a different experience working with Snyder. Maybe Snyder was more receptive. Maybe Snyder filled him full of these ideas that this was the movie that was going to be. And again, not sticking up for Joss Whedon, but he was brought in and paid to do a specific job. And when certain people are not going with the flow and working with the program, and it stops everything dead stop, minutes cost thousands of dollars on a set, as Gary, I'm sure, will get into here when we get to that part, because I'm sure he'll bring in his feelings on this too. Unless it's something that's really detrimental overall to somebody's well-being, or somebody is actually being the Rossist, I don't understand where Ray's coming from, and I think it's hurting him more in the future as an actor than it is anything else, because the guy's not Ben Affleck. He's not some superstar. He's making $250,000 as literally the last star in this movie. You have been in less movies than everybody else. You've only been in one movie before this, and that was a brief appearance in Batman v Superman. You really need to get over yourself. And compared to something like, John Boyega, where there's clear evidence of the shit that he has gone through with Disney, and I feel like he is in the right to say, yeah, they treated me like shit and basically put me to the back of the bus, which they kind of did on that Chinese poster, literally. So like, there is evidence to support what Boyega is saying, as opposed to Ray Fisher outside of these latest accusations. I hate to say it, buddy, but you're just kind of making yourself look like a prima donna. But that's just my opinion from what I know right now. I'm very curious to hear what Gary and Andre have to say about it, though.
My take is, I think if you're going through stuff like this, if you're exposed to, you feel like you're in an environment where stuff's being said to you that is, racist, then I think the normal thing, whether you're being have a sexual problem, you're being, sexualized if you're underage, or you're having to do stuff, I think especially now, you are in a world where you can kind of stand up and say, hey, time out. You can go and talk to your agent. You can talk to your manager. You can talk to somebody, an AD, somebody, and just say, did you hear that? Did you, I have a problem with this, blah, blah, blah. And then even to the point of being corroborated later on, so that, he could say this stuff, and then his agent could turn around and say, yeah, look, here's a here's an email he wrote to me or a text message saying, I need to talk to you. This was said in front of me and I don't feel comfortable about this. And, you know, show us the evidence. I'd like to see that stuff. Do you know what I mean? And if that's been going on, then you know, it's wrong, you know, and it's not to be tolerated, whether it's anybody or anything, you know, people being offensive, rude, bullying, anything at all. Regarding the color timing issue, you know, of like hearing, you know, apparently the thing that set his soul on fire was hearing that, you know, his skin tone had been changed. I don't think that probably, my gut feeling is that what we're talking about is color timing, which is what happens all the time, you know, in terms of
which was a huge issue between the two different Justice League films, if you've seen the trailers and everything.
Well, I do know that didn't Zach shoot on film and Josh shot on digital? So
something like that, yeah. And then you got to imagine whatever Josh shot was not in line with what he shot too. So yeah,
there is color timing issues. You do have color timing issues. I mean, you know, if you know, usually on these films, especially now, we do a thing where it's kind of commonplace where we say we're going to crush the blacks and you know, and make it look grungy. You know what I mean? It's high contrast filmmaking. You know, where you make all of the dark colors very, very dark. You know, it gives it that kind of gritty, grimy, over contrasted feel. I'm sure we've all done it on our phone where you push the contrast up. You know, and it's called, you know, we call it crushing the black. You know, you make the blacks really, really, you know, any black image in the, you know, shadows, and you know, it gives you basically high contrast.
Right. And the other side of this, like Luffy brings up a good point. If they really did say something like this or do something to that effect, or at any point, you know, treat him in a way that was racist, then I feel like he's fully, you know, justified. But you got to produce some evidence though, or some witnesses, because yeah,
like I mean, you know, like I say, if that's what's going on, then that would have gone on day 3, day 4. He would, you know, turn around to your man. He's got a manager, he's got an agent, and say, guys, I need to talk to you. You know, I'm going through some stuff on set that's really kind of a bit gnarly, and this was said and that was said. Really, you know, who said it? What did they say exactly? We need to have a discussion. I mean, hey, worst case scenario, you know, turn yourself on and record, you know, I mean, but an email will be sent. I've had situations where I've had things go down on films where I've gone to see a producer and explained it and talked about it and then followed up with an email just to say, hey, I know we had this discussion earlier on. I'm just writing this email so that it's on record, you know, and you do that. Maybe as a young actor and you didn't know to do that. But what I'm saying is regarding the color timing is that there's a process these days where we do over contrast and make all the dark elements. And if you have an actor who's got dark skin, maybe when they did that process, he kind of disappeared into some of the scenes. So it might have been necessary to lighten up his area, not his skin tone. No one's trying to make him.
Well, okay, something to go off of this that has nothing to do with skin tone per se. Like I'm sure you deal with the same thing in certain makeups, especially creature makeups.
Absolutely. No, I've done creatures that were dark colors and they disappear. The Alien, we used to have the same problem. It's like, guys, we need you to bring it up a bit so we can see it. It's just disappearing because horror films, moody films. I mean, we've all seen Justice League. It's a very dark. They're dark movies. Do you know what I mean? They're
well, right. It was a dark movie that then was turned with the contrast and the color cranked way up. So like, yeah, like everything is a mushy mess.
I see what someone's saying there about taking that line, crush the blacks, out of context. Please don't. It's just a phrase that we use in terms of any black image in the frame. You know what I mean? Any black light is crushed down. It's not meant that way at all and shouldn't be taken that way. And I apologize if anyone thinks I'm saying some kind of negative comment, but it's a common phrase that we use when we say we want to raise the contrast. You know what I mean?
I'm sure everyone understood that. It's
yeah. And some people probably just haven't taken the piss, but no, in the larger historical setting is not ideal, but I think everyone understands that.
And again, I apologize.
Industry non-comps. There's nothing to apologize for.
It's a usual phrase that is used amongst DPs of all creed, race, and color when we talk about.
It's a technical term.
Over contrasting a movie. You know what I mean? What I would say, though, is my gut feeling on this, unfortunately, is that we had a situation where a movie was made where you'd got Gal Gadot, who became a big sensation, Ben Affleck, who was already an established sensation, Jason Momoa, same kind of thing, came in, and then we had two other characters who were kind of on the outside in Ezra Miller and Ray Fisher. And I'm not a huge fan of the movie, but I clearly felt that Ezra Miller stole all of the scenes he was in. And unfortunately, Ray Fisher's portrayal of Cyborg, for me, was very forgettable. It became a very forgettable character. And
I could agree with the latter, but the former, they could recast Ezra, and I'd probably dance for joy. I fucking hated him in that. Sorry,
but a lot of people liked him, and he had his own energy to the character. But
he's actually had a bit of a career before Ray. He's actually been in a few movies. So,
but it did feel like after that, it felt like everybody was getting a TV show and a spin-off except Cyborg. So I just wonder if this is some kind of sour grapes. I hope it isn't, but it feels like it could be. But if this is legitimate and that stuff was done, then shame on them, and they should be, but unfortunately, if this is somebody crying wolf, and I hope it isn't, then it's really not going to have a great effect on his career down the pipe, because everybody's going to be kind of like you're damaged goods, you know what I mean? So, like I say, I think everybody here, all three of us, if this has gone down, then absolutely, and it's terrible, and awful that you would feel that way, and that those things have been said, and but if they haven't, and you can't prove it or show that was the situation, and no one's coming up to corroborate it legitimately, then
right.
I mean, it's going to fall on deaf ears, and unfortunately it'll go nowhere, and it will only just mean that you're kind of, even if it's proven one way or the other, you'll always be viewed as that guy who, instead of people saying Ray Fisher, that amazing actor who played Cyborg, people are going to have a different opinion, like Smollett or somebody else like that,
Right. Well, let me ask you this real quick, and then we'll jump to Andre. And this is just a generalized question. I know you can't speak for every set in Hollywood, but you have been on a lot of sets. And I got to imagine there is so much going on, so much being done, that the color of somebody's skin and somebody who's going to go out of their way to be racist is probably one of the last things on somebody's mind, or probably something you see very rarely. Am I right? Or if it is, it's a coincidence of some type. I got to imagine. I can't imagine it's as rampant as the media and some of these other people are trying to make it out to be right now. And I know, again, like I said, you can't speak for every set or every director or anything like that, but just from your experience over the last, couple decades, do you see a lot of like racism and stuff on the set?
Well, look, I mean, I always find it very difficult to talk about racism, because as soon as I feel like as a white person, as a white middle-aged man, you speak about racism, you
right.
you have nowhere to speak, because you're not of color, so you don't know what it's like. But clearly, if you were, you would know. I worked on three movies where we had predominantly African American cast. Blade, Candyman, Day of the Dead, and When the Bow Breaks. And I generally, what I tend to find on most film sets is you have so little time to get the job done that there's no room for any kind of, people just got to get on with the work they've got to get on with.
That's what I was kind of figuring. Right. I mean, I didn't mean to lead the question, but that's what I thought too. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
If I've ever heard the people who tend to be able to get away with saying stuff that tends to be a little bit colorful in terms of language, an opinion, tends to be actors. Usually they're the people who will occasionally say things that, I've been a makeup artist when you're applying a makeup to somebody and they're just chatting away about their beliefs, whether it's politics, religion, anything, and you do kind of, you're applying a makeup and they're kind of talking to you saying, you know what I mean, right? And it's a very difficult situation when you're sitting there, working with an actor, and you've got to work with them for the next 60 days, and they say something to you that is inherently quite offensive, be it about old people, people of color, about homosexuals, whatever. And you are basically having to listen to this diatribe and not say anything, because you can't say to an actor, excuse me, do you mind? That's really, really offensive. How dare you say that? It's like you feel like if you say that, then you're going to get fired, or how are you going to work with this person for the next 30 or 40 days? And I've had that situation where someone said something where I've had to grind my teeth and keep my mouth shut and not say anything. And I've also seen situations where makeup artists have spoken up and said, don't say that, how dare you, blah, blah, blah. It's a very gray area, because it's how much do you tolerate in terms of offense. Same as, we went through, kind of sexual behavior training,
right,
movies after incidents occurred, and it was like, actors, have you ever felt touched or oppressed? And it was very kind of like aimed at women, like female makeup artists being groped and touched up. And I turned around to the person doing the lecture and said, what about men? And they said, excuse me. I said, I've had female actresses sit on my lap, kiss me, put their arm around me, grab my crotch, make jokes, pinch my butt in the morning. I said, and everybody's actually was like, oh, well, that must be nice for you, eh? Wink, wink, lucky old you. And it's like, why is it a joke for me? Why?
Well, especially if you're married or whatever. Yeah. Like,
right. It's like, and at what point do you go and complain to the producer? And I complained to a producer on 2 occasions where I had a situation with a very young actress who was being overtly sexual, a young underage actress. Literally they were like, oh, come on, it's only another couple of weeks. You just need to kind of put up with it. Like, just come on, dude, take one for the team. We've all got to get by on this. And, I don't have time for this crap, So the people, generally directors and producers, tend to be just worried more about how many shots they're going to get during the day than the color, the ethnicity, the BS of the set. Usually they just want to get the person on in there saying their lines, which is why if somebody doesn't say a line that you need them to say, it's just like, oh, come on, man, I just need you to get this line out because I just want to move on. I don't want to have a discussion about it. Would your character say it? It's in the script, right? This character that you signed on, do me a favor and just say the bloody line. And you're not allowed to say that. You can't walk up to an actor sometimes and say, look, it's here written down. It says say this. So fucking say it, mate. You're paid to say it.
George did.
Shut up and get the line.
George Lucas did.
They're like, how dare you speak to me like that? And they storm. But there's, you don't always have time for a 1 hour conversation about, well, I feel that my character wouldn't do this. It's like, man, I don't have time for this. If you do this and every actor's going to do this in every scene, it's going to, I haven't got time. So my experience usually is actors and directors tend to be just focused on that. But I will say that on Blade, we had, I think Wesley Snipes specifically wanted a lot of African-American people in the terms of backup roles on the film and people hired from, in terms of filling in different positions. He specifically said, I'd like, there to be more inclusive. And so in terms of that, there was definitely a large contingent of African-American people in other roles, makeup, hair, ADs, people like that. And in having conversations with people on that movie, it was said to me, whether it was put at the blame of race, people saying, I'm glad to be working on this. This is the biggest movie I've ever worked on. Because I don't get these opportunities usually. So I'm really grateful that Wesley Snipes made a situation where, in terms of this position, he requested that it be filled by somebody who was of color, and he said, and people said, I normally wouldn't get a job like this. So it was great to be working on that. So yes, I was exposed to it in that, where I did get to see the other side of it, where me, blindly naive, just going about my own job, I don't tend to see anybody of whatever color they are. I just tend, or race or religion or sexuality. I'm just like makeup person, hair person, AD, DP, whatever. And again, I have seen DPs, just like, I've said a phrase there that, you could take out of context. I've seen directors say, directors of photography, guys who are lighting a scene going, we need to bring up the light because, Wesley's disappearing there because he's black, So, like, we can't see him, I need more light on him. Now, could Wesley have gone, hey, what are you saying? Like, you have to put more lights in here because of my color. And he'd probably go, again, I think DPs are just like, they don't see any kind of, all they're seeing is colors and shades. So it's like, well, I need to put more light here. Do you know what I mean? It's not about me being racist or being objectifying you. It's just like, I need to be able to see you, you know what I mean? And you're
right. And what I'm gathering is, like I said, I kind of expected that answer, and I'm kind of, wow. And of course, we've all brought up, not to go down that rabbit hole, the other side of things with the double standards on men in the industry compared to women, and the whole Me Too thing. And that's aside from this or adjacent to this, but it still is in the same vein. But no, I'm not surprised. And of all the movies you've worked on, considering you said, those are the only ones that you really remember any kind of those experiences, I'm not surprised either.
But let me give you an example. I've spoken about this. When the Bow Breaks, which we had, was predominantly African American cast. Sinai Latham and I can't remember his name now. Jesus, it's got it in my brain. But we had a predominantly African American makeup and hair crew. And they were hilarious. They were a great bunch. They were all girls, and they were loud and crazy and very full of energetic. And they would play, kind of R&B music every morning. And I would walk into the trailer, and these 4 women would go, "Oh, here comes Gary, our little piece of white chocolate." You know what I mean? And they would say stuff, and they would jump on me and leap on me and grab me and kind of be quite, woo, and a bit kind of sassy, And I remember the one day the lead actor said to me, he was like Malcolm Chestnut. He said, "Wow, it's kind of black in here, isn't it?" And I was like, it's okay. And he said, "Wow, I'd never really thought about it." He said, "Until I was, since I looked at you." And I said, "Well," I said, "the funny thing is," I said, "if this was a different movie and it was 4 guys who were all listening to Metallica, and 1 female black makeup artist, and we all called her our little slice of black chocolate," I said, "I'm sure there'd be hell to pay." You know what I mean? I'm sure that would not go down very well at all. I said, but it's all good fun, and we had a great experience. But it was Malcolm Chestnut who was the one who pointed out to me and said, "Wow, I never stood back and thought about it from your perspective of how you were being treated," he said. "And wow, if you were a girl, maybe it would be a different one." I was like, "Oh, well, it is what it is." But that was the only time where I felt sort of like, it was funny, but it was like, again, you kind of go, wow, if I wanted to make a scene about this, you could, you know what I mean?
Right. And that kind of goes to the double standard. But now, Andre, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts and opinions on this, especially as somebody from, outside of the US where this nutty stuff is happening. And Gary has a perspective, at least from the industry standpoint, but like, my perspective is from the US standpoint. You're in Norway. So how are you seeing this whole thing from the outside? I know this has all got to kind of, I know I've heard your personal feelings on this, but I mean, share with the audience. I mean, everything you kind of feel about this whole situation, I guess.
Yeah, what basically there's like 2 levels to the accusations here. The first round that we heard was like, "Oh, I was abused and he was mean to me and he wanted me to say this line, which was in the newly written script, and I don't want to say it, even if the character always says it." To me, that seems a little bit like entitled actor who is upset that he did not get the stardom that he wanted. Because remember, the original plan from Zack Snyder, who hired him, was for Ray Fisher to be the heart and soul of the movie, and for there to be a standalone cyborg movie this year, 2020. That was part of the original roadmap. The moment that Zack Snyder was ousted, that roadmap went out the window. In comes Joss Whedon, after Johnson Berg were brought in to basically replace Snyder as Supremo of DC. And then the movie is completely restructured so that he is no longer, that is, Ray Fisher is no longer the heart and soul of the movie. Instead, he's a bit part of the movie. And he can forget all about that solo movie. That's a massive, massive shift for his career. That's basically his stardom that he had imagined gone down the drain right there. And I think that his first round of complaints were perhaps a little bit about that, because when you read like the specifics of his complaints, there was nothing there that no other actor in his stage of their career would have faced. I didn't see any kind of abuse or anything like that based on what he said. Then, of course, there's also the claims that the movie was much, much more diverse under Snyder than it became under Whedon. Under Whedon, he cut out persons of color left and right. They were the ones that were cut out primarily. And also then it was this thing of the tone of their skin being changed. Now I think that this is something that should absolutely be investigated from an outside impartial investigator, because these are serious allegations. Now there's two possible things here. One is that Whedon and Johnson Berg and the people at Warner were like, oh, look at all these black people. Let's just get rid of them. Let's reduce the tone of their skin, because they're like, yeah, we just don't like it. If that is the case, then that is a big issue, and it needs to be dealt with accordingly. However, I don't think that they're going to find that conclusion. I think instead that it's going to be like what Gary said, that it's a matter of color timing, and similar to all the other changes. One thing that Whedon did that Snyder didn't was to completely change the color scheme. Completely change it. If you look at the colors that were in the original trailer that was by Zack Snyder, and the finished movie that was by Whedon, it's a completely different color scheme. And to that end, in going from that one change, it could very well be that then they have to do like some touch up on everyone's complexion. Maybe they even had to do that on Ben Affleck, on Ezra Miller, on Gal Gadot, in addition to the people of color. We don't know. If that is the case, then this is a big nothing burgers. But here you have to do an investigation and find out exactly what is the cause of it. Is it technical reasons that were necessary for the movie in order for the actors to be, as Gary put it, visible on screen? Or was there something else to it? That is not something that I can judge here. Right. Neither can anyone else. An independent investigation has to find that out, just because the allegations have been made. And then it will be up to that commission to decide what the facts are.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I started with. I mean, we don't know exactly all the facts yet. We got a he said kind of situation. They see now, as far as I know, there was an earlier on in this, before this recent round of accusations, Ray called for a third-party investigator. Warner Brothers appeased him in that, and I guess he ended the call for some reason, and he supposedly showed all these emails about this whole thing, and they couldn't understand why he refused to talk to this person. Again, I'm sure Ray has his reasons. I'm not trying to be, pessimistic on his behalf, but I just, again, most of the evidence I keep hearing, to me, it doesn't support a lot of his accusations. But again, like you just said, Andre, if this last round of the racial stuff is true and it should be investigated, if not, it's just basically a misunderstanding on his part, because he probably doesn't understand the technical aspects of making a film, because this is only his second film he's ever worked on. So,
and again, this was a comment made by somebody else that was passed on to him, kind of a Chinese whisper situation where, someone had said one thing and passed on and you don't know. And again, if someone, again, like I casually, said that phrase, earlier on, if you heard that, misconstrued it, I'm sure that would be a phrase that would send certain people into overload. But it's a very common phrase used within lighting and color timing world. You know what I mean? But I would also be curious to hear what someone like Joe Morton said, of his experience of working on the film. I'm sure that, you would expect somebody from HR to knock on his door and say, what was your experience, Joe? You're an experienced actor. You've worked in the industry. Did you feel that on the set at any time you were subject to anything that was, out of place or wrong, or you took in the wrong way, and see what another actor, would say.
All right. Andre, was there anything else you wanted to add to this, or should we jump to some super chats?
Yeah, no, let's jump to some super chats. I'm just going to refresh so that we get them all. And Pokemon style. The next one we have is, let's see. Yes, Douglas Nelson says Jeff Johns is still involved with other Warner properties like the Stargirl show, and has some involvement with the Green Lantern film and HBO Max series. Yeah, and he also had everything to do with this is something that I'm adding. He also had everything to do with the Matt Reeves Superman movie being the one going forward, and Ben Affleck leaving the role in the first place. So yeah, he absolutely still has involvement. That's part of the reason why this still needs to be investigated. You have people there that are still in the industry, still working, so the allegations need to be examined. And then Miranda Sinistra says, racism can happen to anyone. I think it's unfair to say white people don't know what racism is and therefore can't speak about it. And finally, Stephen Otten says, those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. A lesson that Hollywood never seems to learn. And with that, we are caught up.
I just want to address that one just before. I mean, again, true. Racism can come from anybody in any form. It doesn't matter what color your skin is on any end. But I think I can speak for all of us here being white. Until recent years, I'm sure it's not been a situation where a lot of white people can really say that unless they've been in a particular situation, you really experience the type of things you would have, say, if you were black or Asian or something to that effect. And that's totally understandable. But again, we're all white, so that's all we can say, right? Without getting canceled in this day and age.
We have not very little we should have said in the matter, but it's Ray Fisher that has making it a public discussion by taking it public. And since we address genre news and genre media, of course, we have to address what he says, like everything else. And it would be a remission of it would be neglecting our duty to our audience if we failed to do so. But again, it just needs to be investigated, and then let's have all the facts on the table and then make the necessary verdicts after that, is what I say. And I believe that is something that we are all in basic agreement with. And to take it also back to deepfaking, it's going to be very interesting to see how that's going to address and change the industry going forward. And that is something that we're going to be following up on. Just as we have the streaming wars, this is a topic that we will address very, very much so in future videos. And we'll have Gary J. Tunnicliffe here to do it with us, who is the absolute authority on this matter. Not yet on deepfaking, but certainly in staying ahead of the game in terms of trends in industry and the makeup special effects department. And there's very few I can think of that can speak with more authority on what the possible ramifications of untested technology could be. And Pop Culture Minefield, good friends of ours, just said, remember Darabont was removed from Walking Dead. I remember that, but I don't remember the significance. But yeah, thanks for the support in any event. And with that, I believe we have covered everything that we needed to cover for today. So I would like to say thanks to everyone who joined us today. Remember to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Hit like. And for those of you that complain about where's the regular videos, actually we do regular videos too. We had one yesterday about Jared Leto returning to the role of the Joker, so do make sure to check that out. Gary, where can people find you?
Oh God, I'm nowhere really apart from on Instagram. Still waiting for my announcement about a movie that I'm supposed to be hopefully directing next year, which I will let everyone excitedly know about, and some of the it'll be fun to be able to hopefully announce that. But if you want to follow me on Instagram, you're more than welcome. On follow Hollywood Assassin, and there's lots of pictures of makeup effects and all kinds of fun stuff on there.
Excellent.
Doc Dirge really, really, really wants to know. He's asked the whole show. He's been patient. Okay. I'm assuming Doc Dirge is a male. I'm sorry, I shouldn't assume any genders here. My bad. But yes, what does Anjar mean? Or if I'm saying that, butchered, I'm sure.
What does Einharjar mean? Those are Odin's chosen warriors that fight with him against the forces of evil in the Norse Armageddon.
Wow.
So yeah,
I don't know the word of it. Probably means primrose or daffodil or something.
And he
like
has
that.
to add one more good zinger in there.
More flower on the hill, it probably means, really. You know what I mean? But no,
Doc,
you've chosen Warriors of Odin as your second name.
Doc Dirge has to throw one more zinger in there by saying where to find Gary in the middle of being sexually harassed by women, apparently.
Yeah. Hey, not that I mind that sometimes. Yeah. No. It's always funny, right? It's sexual harassment when they're women you don't like, I guess.
Is that how it works? It's the same thing with women and men, though, evidently, too. So it goes both ways, So, but again, I want to thank all of you guys out there for listening. Hopefully the show didn't suck. I think everybody had a great time. You guys were very active in the chat, bringing up a lot of great points, having a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys hanging out with us here. You guys make the show. Is there anything you want to say, Andre, before we go?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for hanging out, and be sure to catch us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And Gary is a regular guest and always welcome. We love hearing your insights. And
hey, that does not have to be taken a bad way. Maybe he just has a thing for women of a particular race. That just could mean that. You never know. He likes to,
Let's not get into industry jargon. So
is that we've used in the industry for however long, purely about raising the contrast. That's all it's about. So
everyone here knows. Everyone knows, Gary. So don't worry.
If I happen to go online tomorrow and there's a video of me, like somewhere where someone choicefully edited phrases of me saying something to make me look like some kind of, psychopath.
Maybe they'll deep fake it into something else.
You crush a lot, but not, exactly.
Well, if Gary's stories are true, I'm sure he does crush a lot, Red Syrup. So there you go.
Yeah.
Just so you know, Gary, I'm sure you know that's a slang for,
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what that means. And, absolutely.
Yes. All right. Anything else, Andre, before we bid adieu to all these fine folks?
Now, with that, we bid adieu to all the fine folks. So thanks for having us, and thanks for joining us today. Be sure to check back on Wednesday and check the regular videos in the meantime. Bye-bye.